Yeah, so Tommy, tell me about yours. Let's go into your background first.
Sure.
Where does it all begin for you?
Oh man. Well, if we're talking high level, for me it begins. I'm from New Jersey, so I'm not sure if everybody knows that, but I'm from New Jersey. I grew up in Edison. Shout outs to Gary B. We're from the same hometown. Great guy. Anyway, um, so I went to school. I got my undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering and at New Jersey Institute of Technology, where I had the awesome opportunity to work for to do products for companies such as Nav Air, which is the Naval Air Defense of the United States. I got to do products for Procter and Gamble, all sorts of really cool, interesting projects in my undergrad years. And then from undergrad, I went directly to Georgia Tech, which in itself is a whole story. But let's just say it started with one email. And let's just say everybody out there, take every opportunity given to you because you never know where it's going to lead. And I had one little email that normally I would have deleted and I didn't delete it. But I went to Georgia Tech. I had an incredible time getting my master's degree in industrial design. And so for those of you out there who aren't familiar with that, industrial design really, if you look around you, if you can touch it or interact with it, a designer out there created it. The chairs, the mouse you're touching, the cup you're drinking out of, a designer created that. And so at Georgia Tech, I had even more incredible opportunities. I got to work with companies such as NCR or Porsche, Coca-Cola. And then I had the opportunity to become a University Innovation Fellow, which is where I first met Humera. And I got to go from Georgia Tech's campus to visit Stanford's campus, which in itself was another amazing opportunity for myself because without going into like my upbringing, I definitely didn't think I was shocked as far as like how my life had taken these steps to get to where I got to. I would have never thought I would be at Stanford's campus when I was 15 years old. Wouldn't have even been a thought. So from there, a lot of great opportunities, a lot of great companies I've had touch points with, incredible education, great strong network of people. And then I graduated in 2018, and I thought I've arrived. I thought this is it. This is what you go to school for. I've got degrees in engineering. I went to Georgia Tech. I've been to Stanford. I have a fellowship. I have a fellowship from Georgia Tech and a fellowship from Stanford. I thought, damn it, the door is going to be knocking down for me. Let's just say 2 years later, I'm sitting in front of all of you, and I can humbly say that did not happen for me. I went knocking on the doors myself, and none of those doors opened up. And it was an awakening for me because I went through so many experiences at Georgia Tech, coming from New Jersey and then coming to the South, having sort of my own mental biases about the people who are around me because you grow up reading and understanding the history of the South as an African American, as a minority. And going through all those experiences, persevering through those experiences, and then to feel the rejection from companies, which that was ridiculously difficult. So anyhow, I graduated and I didn't get a single job offer. I got some really great looks. I had a lot of great companies bring me in for first, second, even third round interviews, but none of them materialized into an actual offer. And 2 years later, I'm still sitting on the sidelines, and I have to. I feel like besides the bias in bringing on someone who is, I would consider myself to be more on the. I grew up more on the urban spectrum of like being Black, so I would say bringing in someone who has maybe my mannerisms, the way that I carry myself sometimes, the way I approach design thinking. It's been a bit of a struggle, but I'm just here to tell my story and be authentic. And so that's a really rough draft of where bit about my background and where I'm at today. So that's it. I would say it's a rough draft.
Well, it's probably not it. We're going to go deeper.
Yes.
And You know, what really struck me, and Tommy, I've known you for a while now, since you've been a part of the University Innovation Fellows movement, but when you were first starting to look for a job, and when you were first encountering some of those barriers, you had a very interesting insight about recruitment demographics and what companies are like first blush looking for when they're doing their early career, that entry level hire. So tell me, how old were you when you were graduating with your degrees relative to your peers?
Yes. So I'm a late bloomer in life. I'll admit that. As far as academics and getting your degrees, I'm a bit of a late bloomer. And part of that was because of my background. There's a great video, if you go on YouTube, I don't want to go into too much depth right now, but if you go to YouTube and just Google or YouTube, Thomas Clifton and letters UIF. I gave a great talk at Stanford and kind of gave a high level, bird's eye view of what that background was. But because of my background, I started school very late. I started my undergrad years, I started at a community college at 25 years old. And then I got 24, 25, and then I graduated at 30 with my bachelor's. And then the grad program is a 3-year program. So I graduated at 33 from Georgia Tech. And I had, when I did graduate, some of the feedback that I received from unnamed HR people at unnamed companies was that you look great on paper, you have an incredible pedigree here. What we don't see is you don't have X amount of years working in, a white collar environment, a corporate setting, which really wasn't true because I actually, at that point, I had founded 2 companies. One of them was fairly successful. We had to exit. We had to shut down because relationships with the founders. And then I started an e-com business that I ran through my first couple of years at grad school. And I was basically living off of that. I was doing well, selling a really niche product. And so these HR people at unnamed companies, I had a few of them come back to me and basically kind of tell me like, hey, you're a bit older. If we bring you into the company now, I'm concerned, their view. I'm concerned that you're using this as a springboard to get to your next opportunity. And so basically it was being aged out of job opportunities. And that was 2 years ago. And 2 years, down the road now, you don't go backward in time. I'm not Benjamin Buttons as much as I would love to believe I am. So, that was a wake-up call for me because that in itself was a huge bias. I mean, pretty sure it's illegal. I'm pretty sure it's illegal, but the way they were wording it, they were being very careful as far as how to tiptoe around the subject without necessarily saying you're kind of too old for us. Not necessarily too old, but we'd rather maybe bring in someone who's younger. Basically, is what they were telling me. And so that was really eye-opening. That was really eye-opening. And again, it sort of feeds into the mental, you start to build a mental framework of rejection. I think that's the hardest part of not getting an opportunity. It's the feeling of rejection. It's like having a crush on a person that you like out there. And every single time that you approach a person with the framework of what you are attracted to, they reject you every single time, and you begin to feel like I'm not worthy. So anyhow, that's what kind of happened to me.
It's not your fault, and we're trying to figure this whole bias in hiring out. Bias in hiring, it sounds negative, but we all have biases. And as long as we are aware of what those biases are in our hiring practice, then we can compensate for it. We can do something about it. And perfectly well-meaning people out there who have no idea what they're doing, what they're systematically doing, and we're going to help them figure it out. And I have every confidence that our figuring it out is going to help you land some of those opportunities. Now, you mentioned a video, and we don't have to go into the depth of that video, but I think there's some really important things here. You grew up in Edison. It was a pretty rough experience growing up in Edison. If I could paraphrase that video, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, there were drugs, there were guns, there was a risk to life that you were able to escape, that you were able to pull yourself out of. It took some time. Yes. It took some time, right? Yes. It took, the time that it took, you know, you look at when you started your community college experience, I think you said you were 25. That's still pretty young. But from there, you know, it wasn't easy. Did you feel as though, so you had a couple of false starts too, in terms of, like, I think you were on a college scholarship, and like, college didn't suit you initially, as it doesn't many people who don't come from the best funded schools. I didn't come from, my early education was at PS14Q in Queens, New York City, not the best funded school. I can tell you that when my parents pulled me out and put me in the suburbs, I was getting 56 out of 100 on a test, and I had no idea whether that was good or bad. It's a different system whatsoever. It's an entirely different system. So tell me, let's go there for a minute.
Sure.
Tell us what you went through and what you learned coming out of that, and what perspective you brought to your educational experience when you got to Georgia Tech.
Sure. So I just want to clarify. So I grew up in Edison. A lot of experience of that. So before I got to Edison, we had moved 12 times before I was a freshman in high school. So a lot of those experiences that I experienced were things from bouncing from, you know, one town to the next town, to one apartment to the next apartment. And then you sort of bring those things with you because your family, you know, I had family who was, you know, living in other parts that were less desirable. You know, Edison's not the worst place in the world, but you definitely encounter a lot of things there. But so to answer your question, the things that I brought with me, let me just make sure, I'm sorry, could you ask me the question one more time?
Well, you had, like, okay, most students graduate from high school and go right to college. Your pathway was not quite so seamless. You had some bumps in the road that you had to navigate through, which is not unlike many Black and brown people in our nation, right? But you did it. Mm-hmm. You ultimately did it. So can you describe a little bit about those experiences that you had to go through to get to that point? I mean, I'd love for viewers to understand the grit and resilience that got you to ultimately to college.
Absolutely. So I guess I'll start off by saying I typically, like, I literally am the statistic because I'm Black, I'm Puerto Rican, I come from a single parent household. My father was an alcoholic. I had cousins and family who were, you know, running with gangs that were not, they were, you know, rival gangs. I had a cousin, my older cousin had a drive-by shooting on his house when I was like probably 10 years old. And then they literally, like, moved out of the neighborhood because it was too unsafe for him and his sister and his mother and father. You know, when I was about, I would say 17, I had an issue with this guy, and he ends up pulling a gun to the side of my head, and he pulled the trigger, and it clicked. It didn't go up. Everything right there would have been, my story would have been done right then and there. I was probably about 17 when that happened, maybe 18. But that's you know, I went through stuff like that. When I graduated high school, my mother and I were homeless for a while. So we were bouncing from, this couch to that, maybe that couch to someone's basement that they kind of had furnished a little bit. It took my mother months and months and months to get us to a place where we can have an apartment again. I had the opportunity to play football when I graduated high school. My mother, being a school teacher, really wanted the best for me, for her son. And I have a brother who passed away, and I can probably have 24 friends who were either killed or spent at least a year or more in prison before I was like 21 years old. But anyhow, so I did have the opportunity to play, as you were mentioning. I played 1 year in Kansas during college, and then I destroyed my knee. And for me, football was like my entire world. And I came back home. Like, going to Kansas was like a fresh start for me. Like, I was leaving all this shit behind me, all these things that were like distractions for me, an abusive household, all these things that were distractions for me, that I wasn't necessarily, I didn't want to be necessarily a part of those things, but it just kind of was, it just kind of is. And so I went to Kansas, and then just to think that here's my shot, here's my chance to get out of this stuff. And then I get thrown right back into the Lions then when I came back home. And then for years, I was just kind of like finding my way. I was just in this, I didn't know what the hell to do. I was just in this fog. I didn't have the grades to get into a public, university like Rutgers University. I didn't have college credits. I was kind of working these little odd jobs, and I was just in this funk. I was in this fog. I didn't know how to get out of it. I just didn't know how to get out of it. I really didn't.
But you did, and you ultimately did. So then, what switched for you? Like, what was that thing that was like that clicked, and you were like, I'm going to do this?
So to answer that briefly, I think that growing up Black can pull you in different directions, and I talk about that in the video as well. Growing up Black pulls you in different directions. You're expected to be something. The world thinks you're this way. You have your own personal, like you know who you are, and you're being pulled in all sorts of different. You should be a great athlete. You probably are good at basketball, and you must love rap. Can you rap? You sag your pants. Your hat should look backwards. Like, oh, you can't like punk rock. You can't like these other things, right? You don't play golf. So you're being pushed and pulled the entire time. So I was dealing with all these pushes and pulls. And so when I was 25, funny story, I tell people all the time, this is honest to God how it happened. My mother had this fake leather sofa thing in our apartment. And I was laying down one summer, and my younger brother, who's 5 years younger than I am, Christopher, was just getting into University of Delaware, where he gets a degree in finance. He's crushing it in Manhattan, by the way. Shout out to my brother Christopher. He's a VP for Bank of America right now. Yeah, 30 years old. Yeah, VP, crushing it. So anyhow, I was literally laying on my mother's sofa, and I tell the story every single time because it's the honest to God's truth. I was laying there. It was a hot summer. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a summer job. I didn't have a haircut, similar to his COVID days, but worse. And it just snapped. My skin was sticking to the sofa. I felt grimy, and I said, "This can't be it, man. This cannot be your story, Tommy. Like, you're a smart, intelligent guy. My mother did all the best things she could to give me the best upbringing, even though maybe she didn't know I was doing certain things, growing up Black, being pulled in different directions. I was laying there, and it just snapped. I said, "This is it. This is not how your story's gonna be written, man. Get yourself up, and you're gonna go to school. You're gonna become an engineer, and you're gonna get out of this." And honestly, God, that's exactly how it happened. Just a light bulb went off my head, and from that point, it was a 180. Just I wanted to do it, and it was a 180.
You were at your lowest point, and you committed to yourself at that moment. Never again.
Never again. At that moment, yep. Yeah, I mean, I just so many other things going on at that point, But I remember just laying there and like my skin was sticking to this like this fake leather sofa, and it was hot. And because I didn't have the money, I didn't want to turn the air conditioning on because I don't want to be the one to run the bill up. And yeah, it was like the grimiest, worst feeling I ever had about myself, and just physically and mentally, just like, this is it, no way.
So, so 25 to 33, you invest your time in getting an undergraduate engineering degree and a graduate engineering degree from Georgia Tech. And so let's fast forward now. You have this incredible early life experience where you are the statistic. It takes you some time, but you pull it together. You graduate from one of the most prestigious institutions in the nation. We don't have to, well, how many, let's talk about you mentioned your search for a job. How many applications would you say that you put in, and what was that process?
So honestly, in the first six, I'll give you two numbers: the first 6 months and probably year to date. The first 6 months post graduation, I probably put about, I would say maybe 30. I thought these were like the 30 companies I'd want to work for, and then when that didn't happen, I would say I'm probably eclipsing at this point. I'm in the hundreds, but it's probably like, I couldn't even tell you. It honestly might be 300 or 400, because I've applied to companies in different states at all different levels, companies I didn't even know existed before this. So I would say maybe 300 or 400 year to date.
And you had a very interesting insight. A lot of these companies, their hiring process, the first interaction with a candidate is that algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So tell me about your insights there.
Yeah, I think that's really frustrating, because applying to one company takes energy and effort, because they still want you. A lot of times they still want you to, fill out all these, fill out the blanks, right? You're giving them your resume, you're uploading it, but they still want you to tell them about your work history and like all the contacts for the last 2 or 3 years of your life. And so I forgot who told me, or who kind of was like, hey, you're probably not getting through, because I was submitting these resumes, and these companies use a separate outsourced company, a software program that basically scans your resume, looks for keywords such as like years of work history, companies you work for, other keyword terms probably that are related to the job you're going for. And the feedback I was getting was, you're probably not even getting in front of an HR person, because the system is kicking you out before you even get there. And probably what has hurt me the most is being that late bloomer, like not having that pedigree, the pedigree of work history, even though I had a pedigree of education. And I think, not necessarily knowing people growing up, the way I grew up, I didn't know anybody. I mean, I don't have anybody in my immediate family that was someone of someone at any company. I couldn't just say, hey, Dad, can you tap so and so on the shoulder because they know so and so. I don't know. I don't have anybody like that in my family. And so, anyhow, uploading resumes, it definitely, I think it hurt me quite a bit, as far as being booted out of the system before I even had a chance to get in front of an HR person. And let me just add to that, even if I've spent money on LinkedIn and tried to like email people, the problem there is these people are inundated with messages every single day. The likelihood of them seeing your message and actually taking the time to reply to it, it hasn't been very strong for me. It does happen, but maybe for every 100, I maybe get 3 emails back, or I might get 2 or 3 emails back, and maybe like a few of them that like ping me back, or somehow. So anyhow, that's been very eye-opening for me as well.
And I wonder, we're gonna, over the next several weeks, try to understand this system more. You mentioned that companies outsource this to some firms. I believe there are a few large firms that manage this process. Hewlett, Korn Ferry, these are like traditional recruiters. I imagine that it's there. Those are the kinds of companies that are the thin, impermeable barrier between applicants and companies like that. And if they see your name coming over 400 times to different companies, I wonder if you're, certain things happen. You get flagged as, as someone to put in a different pile. This is what I'm imagining. If it were me, I would see that as almost like I don't know. I would wonder about that. So, this is, to me, this is the kind of conundrum that we have to figure out. If you are a late bloomer, you do get your life together. Like you in fact, the educational experience that you have puts you on par with just about any other student who graduates with their master's, which would put you at about, what would you say, like 24, 25? And without, with the regular level of project-based experience that you would get from working with companies, and you've worked with a number of companies on a number of different projects, but you're going to be compared to 33 and 35-year-olds. And they're going to look at similar, credentials. What is a 35-year-old engineer doing, making, what experience do they have? And so they're comparing you to an entirely different person that there is no comparison, right?
I think someone like that, I think that person fits a mental schema of like someone who's maybe had a more linear trajectory, like what you would think of, like you connect the dots. If you do A, then you get to B. Do B, you get to C. But for a lot of people out there, that's just not the case. It's just not the case.
This is where we come back to systemic racism, right? Because for years it was illegal for Black people to live in areas that were not redlined.
Right, redlining, yeah.
Right, redlining is where Black and brown people were put in places where they could not move out of those places. It was illegal for mortgage companies to give loans, and it was a lot of homes outside of those areas have in their deeds, you shall not sell this home to a Black or brown family. So you're in this demographic where schools are perhaps not well funded. There is a lot of economic imbalance, a lot of struggle. You pull yourself out of that. I mean, it's the biggest injustice is that you are not given a shot when you finally do make it out with your master's degree. And I think that there's still hope. I think we can still get this story out in front of the right HR people, because you're an incredible human being, so empathetic, a great engineer, a great employee. And I can say that as you're on my team.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you bring such a richness of understanding about life and about economic issues and urban issues. You bring a diverse perspective that a lot of companies that you're trying to get into just lack, because they have less than 2% Black and brown people in their ranks. They want to be more diverse, but they don't understand the issues like this, do they?
No, and even to highlight this even stronger, I think if I just look back at my time at Georgia Tech, I don't know what this is called, but I guess the guidelines about when the school can dismiss you because of poor grades. I just want to put this notion to rest for people who are watching us right now. Just because you go to a fancy name school does not mean that the school doesn't have ridiculously low underperformers.
Oh
just to highlight that, the freshman GPA before the school removes you from the school is a 1.7. So they're saying that there are freshmen at Georgia Tech who have 1.7s who stay at Georgia Tech. By your sophomore year, you need a 2.3 in order to remain at the school. So, I mean, I think you're hard pressed to say that you can't find more kids out there who can't maintain a 1.7, have the same access to education, technology, engineering professors, companies that come to Georgia Tech and maintain a 1.7 and give them a chance to go through, just like so many other kids get to go through. So anyhow, that's a little bit of a tangent, but there are definitely a lot of red flags in the entire process. I mean, I can talk about so many other things right now, but let's stay focused, Tommy.
Well, I mean, I think this is the time to talk about some of those things because these are the biases that we are not understanding when making our hiring decisions, right? Because, well, look, how did you do in your education? You're talking about the spectrum of different grades. If you're a person from one of those privileged communities, you get to Georgia Tech, you maintain a minimum GPA. Your parents are super well connected, and you've had a pretty linear path. Where are you going to land? What are those outcomes?
You're not going to be starving, that's for sure. You're not going to be without an opportunity for very long. I can say in my case, I made the dean's list. Probably if I was in school for 7 years, I've been on the dean's list. Probably 6 of those 7 years, every single year. But you go with the mindset of thinking, growing up as a kid, you're always told you have to do better because of your skin color. And so I was at, the top tier institution. I thought I had to do better than my peers. I was always putting in the extra hours to outwork them, trying to find ways to outdo what they did. It was competitive for me because I was an athlete to begin with. And so being competitive in the classroom was just an extension of that for me. But I was always trying to, over compete against my peers. Yeah.
Tommy, you made the dean's list how many semesters? That's
6 out of 7 years, not semesters, years.
Wow. I don't think I made the dean's list once. I'm so impressed. But I'm not surprised. But I'm just, props to you. So, all right. I think a recording of the live stream is going to get into human resource hands, and you're going to get looks and offers. And so, first of all, you got to continue to host bias in hiring, because there are other people out there who have similar stories and they need to get their word out, and we need to try to understand and unearth the issues of this problem so that human resource departments at these large companies who say they want to be diverse can actually understand what some of the issues are and start to look at candidates differently. I think Absolutely. That's the key thing, is that you've got to start to look at candidates differently in terms of age, in terms of life experience, in terms of attitude. I've always said that, I will hire for attitude over skill. You can always train someone. You can always teach them how to do something. But if they don't have the right attitude, then you're not going to be able to, they're not going to be a great teammate. They're not going to be a great team player. They're not going to be a great asset to your team. So always hire for attitude. And you've got a great attitude. So what are some parting thoughts you'd like to leave us with as you think about advice to other young people who shouldn't be disheartened as they too try to pull themselves up out of their circumstance? Let's talk about how you have succeeded and thrived, how you've made ends meet in the time since you've graduated.
Sure. So I'll answer both of those separately. So the first one is, what advice I give people? I would say 2 things that I'm open about. The first one is I cry all the time. something else that I have on my plate that Mary, I take care of my father. I've taken care of him for several years now. Cooking, bathing, folding laundry every single day. It's a slog. 3 days a week, driving him to Dallas and picking him back up. So I think releasing and knowing that, like, when I feel overwhelmed, I will cry, and I'm okay to cry. I cry all the time, and I say, frequently, not every single day, but I cry frequently. So I think that, it's okay to just like get so mad that you have hot tears coming out of your face because you're so frustrated and you're thinking, why do I have to struggle like this? Why? It's okay. It's okay to like let go and have those feelings. The other thing that I talk about now, for, as far as finding happiness, the one thing that I've learned the most from the last couple of years is to not allow others to define the value that you have for yourself. And so mental health is so important, because I can tell you that the last few years for me have been the hardest, most taxing years of my life. And there's been nothing physical about it. It's all been a mental game. And so mental health is super important. And I deal with depression because of this. I deal with having to get through it. So I want people out there to like know, yes, number one, it's very okay to cry and scream and let it out. And the second thing is, most important, take care of your mental health, because that's if your mental health is not in place, it's hard for you to pick up and keep going. And then, I'm sorry, your second question was?
Yeah, so you didn't get the offers from Google and Facebook and Microsoft, but you've been doing some pretty cool things.
Yes.
So what are those cool things that you've done, and that you've been that you're going to continue to do until those offers come?
Yes. So the biggest thing that I continue to do is, for me, growing up, I realized that going through grad school and going to school, the biggest thing that's changed, that was different for me versus other people, is access to Georgia Tech, access to people like yourself, Humera, access to being at places like Stanford, and the network and community of people you get to meet there. So I have dedicated myself over the last couple of years to continuing to teach and give access to underserved children, communities, high schools, middle schools, running summer camps here in the Atlanta area. I'm currently doing something with Rice University as well, but I've pretty much been teaching design to students. I've been teaching them entrepreneurship from my lens and how I've kind of gone through entrepreneurship. There's no right way, obviously, but that's what I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of odd jobs in and around design work, in and around design thinking, facilitation of workshops, and a lot of teaching at Clark Atlanta University, at Spelman University here in Atlanta. So that's really what I've been doing a lot of over the last couple of years to stay afloat.
You also had a startup, and you put that startup through an accelerator. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So my master's thesis at Georgia Tech received so much high praise because basically the dean of the College of Design, Jim Budd, and my graduate professor, Wayne Lee, who you know very well, they were blown away by the amount of research that I had done on a particular topic, which is basically sports technology. And they really pushed me hard to take this to the next level. So I would, in all honesty, I would say that the first year after graduation, I was focused on trying to get a job. I wasn't necessarily thinking of building this thing into a company. But because that didn't happen, I thought about the other things that I had done. And so I sort of took the dust off my master's thesis, and I began building a company called Metric, METRIQQ, metric.com. And I applied to an accelerator here in Atlanta called It Takes a Village at the Atlanta Tech Village. I was accepted. It was a 3-month accelerator. I came in second place at the end of it all. So we just wrapped up the voting and demo day on June 1st. And so I came in second place, which is awesome. And so I've been working on that. I have been working on that.
You've also put in some time at Real Industry. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So at Real Industry, I've had the awesome opportunity to help students who are coming out of college and helping them to, find those opportunities for themselves at the next level through mentorship, through connecting them with large companies. We've hosted basically like large Zoom roundtables with 100 plus people in the room, where we have mentors from industry who work with students, and they give their time to answer questions and give them like knowledge from the inside out. So I've had the awesome opportunity to do that with real industry, and I can empathize with these students because they may not realize that I was and still am in their shoes for very different reasons, but the drive and the want to get into a company is something that I 100% understand all of their struggles with. And so I have continued to try and be the best mentor that I possibly can, even mentoring the student from California that I work with, and I teach her design skills now. We have like a Zoom call and we do that stuff. So I've been with real industry now since, I guess, late February, officially like late February. And one more thing I will say, so now you're kind of jogging my memory here, the things I've done. I wrote a kids STEAM book. I authored and illustrated a kids workbook, STEAM book.
Science, technology, engineering, art, and math, for those who don't know the acronym. Yes,
exactly. You're correct. That's what STEAM stands for. And I was trying to help, basically, for people out there who don't know, I was working with kids from grades 1 through 3, the first to third grade, and children who do not read at the third grade reading level by the third grade have like a 7x the likelihood they will go to prison before they're 18 years old, which is like a crazy correlation. So long story short, I created a STEAM workbook that was focused around a topic that I love to do when I was I love to build model rockets. My father introduced me to building model rockets when I was a child. And what I did was I made sure that the book had literacy components inside of it. So the kids were learning vocabulary, they were learning how to write and spell words that they didn't necessarily know how to beforehand, phonetically. I was prototyping something that had never been done before. And to this day, I don't think it's been done because I tried finding something to use and I couldn't find something. So I built my own. So I built a STEAM literacy workbook for children called Luna Sprocket Builds a Rocket. Yeah.
Okay, so you started a company based on research off of being on the dean's list and having your dean urge you to explore the company opportunities. You wrote a book for that student that you probably could, you could envision that student who couldn't read by the age of third grade, and you designed a book specifically for them. You work for real industry, and in fact, you've been paying the bills by participating in the sharing economy, which has taken a huge hit during this pandemic. So you've been, I would say, like, you're the model hustler who can pay the bills by getting, talk a little bit about that. How you've made ends meet and explored these other interests of yours.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like, you're helping me jog my own memory here.
There's so much to in your life, Tommy. You've really pulled it together and you've pieced it together. But let's tell that part of the story.
Sure. So as far as like hustling with the gig economy, I'll admit, I was driving Uber. I was doing like 10, 12-hour days, usually at least 4 days a week. And then, but I was driving 7 days a week, like legit 7 days a week, starting back. I think I first joined Uber in September of 2019 or August of 2019. But up until the pandemic hit, I was driving, honestly, 6-7 days a week, putting in 8 hours a day in that seat, easily 8 hours every single day, just so I can like keep things afloat. Because what else are you gonna do? You gotta put your pants on. You gotta put one foot in front of the other, and you have to go out there and work. And if I don't do those things, I can't take care of my father. I can't keep a roof over my head. So that's I was driving Uber. I was doing a lot of Ubering. At one point, I even tried, for some of you who live in the larger cities out there, I was picking up those little bird scooters. I was waking up at 4 a.m. before we drive Uber. I was picking up the bird scooters, and I was fine. I was dropping them back. I would pick them up at like midnight, drop them back off by like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then getting into the car to drive Uber. And that was not lucrative at all. Finding bird scooters is hard. If you ever try doing it, it's hard. And yeah, but I was hustling.
That's, you know, I mean, it sounds like a lot of hard work. And the other piece, I know I'm jogging your memory, but you also dabbled in the Airbnb thing, yes, which also a very lucrative and growing market until the pandemic.
Yes. So let me take a step back. So when I graduated through tech, I was already in like real estate flipping and so forth, because I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always trying to find I've always thought about investing. That's really what it is. I'm always thinking about investing. And so I had a property here in Atlanta that we actually just sold. It's June 29th. I think maybe we sold it a month and a half ago, maybe a month ago. But I was on Airbnb. We had the property there. We made Superhost 3. So they do it, I think, every 6 months. So we were Superhost all three times that we were on the platform. And then in April-ish, they sent an email for us to become Airbnb Plus members. So basically, if you don't know, like Superhost is like that gold standard. You want to become a Superhost. And then Airbnb Plus is for the top 1% of Airbnb properties within a region. So in Atlanta, Airbnb, and it's invite only. I can't apply to it. In Atlanta, our property was in the top 1% of properties in all of Atlanta, and we were invited to become Superhost. But because of the pandemic, we just couldn't do anything with it. So we had to sell the property, unfortunately. But the thing I learned about that is hospitality, taking care of people's needs, running the day-to-day sort of management part of a business, balancing your books, everything that needs to be done to run a successful property at that level takes a lot of work and a lot of planning. But once you have that system going, it's fairly easy to manage.
You have such a diversity of experiences and such a well-rounded understanding of different parts of our economy, and clearly you're a hard worker, and you found a way to make it happen for yourself. And but if you were to get that offer from Autodesk, who's about to establish an office in Atlanta, or from Google or Facebook, what would you shift in your life in order to make way for a big career like that?
Everything. I'm not tied down to anything. The only thing I'm tied down to is making sure that I take care of my father. And I will always I will do that, until. But there is nothing that ties me down. There's nothing that prevents me from picking up and moving to Oslo, Norway. There's nothing that prevents me from going to, South Africa. It doesn't matter to me. To answer that question, there would be nothing that would prevent me from going anywhere, and nothing that I'm doing would supersede that. So metric, all those things would cease to exist. My focus is now becoming the best team member within a team at a company and bringing the most value and helping to drive the needle, move the needle forward. That would be my only goal.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up this hour, I would love to get the recording of this live stream in the hands of a lot of colleagues and get their advice and their insights about how you should be navigating the HR system in order to land your job, how you should be positioning and presenting yourself, and what some of the things are that we should be communicating to HR departments that help penetrate that seemingly impenetrable barrier and land you that opportunity. And so we'll, as you see this recording, make sure to type your comments and your advice, connections, thoughts, insights right into the thread below. Tommy's all ears, wants to know. And also, If you're someone who identifies with this story or has your own story, then you got to sign up in the link below to be a guest in this live stream. Again, weekly, 9 a.m. Eastern, here on Facebook Live. Just drop in your name, give us a date that works for you, and Tommy's gonna love spending time uncovering your story.
Absolutely, 100%. And I hope that me opening up today and bringing my authentic self to the table, I really hope that it empowers some of you out there to feel comfortable sharing. And even if it's not about sharing about your personal story, just talking about the things that you see, that you notice, and hurdles that maybe that you know are there for others to overcome.
That's right. And this conversation was just a one-on-one. It's also our very first live stream, but we're envisioning that future conversations would invite people who want to join the conversation. It shouldn't just be like a two-way conversation. We could have 3, 4, 5, 10 people participating, and let's like really understand the issues and support one another. 100%. Thank you so much, Tommy, for being your authentic self and sharing your story.
Thank you, Humira, for allowing me to share it and talk about it and open this dialogue with the greater